together with you all. Starting as we usually do with a question that's come in advance. We'll then open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. I'm very bad at maintaining relationships, especially among friends and family. It's because I really don't care much about their lives. I am more concerned about myself, underprivileged people, and society as a whole. But this results in extreme loneliness. I don't have anyone to talk to on a personal, intimate level. How to tackle this loneliness. So first of all, we need to realize that our commitment to the society, to the community, to the world, includes our friends and family members. There's no teaching that says, thou shalt be in the seva of the world, minus your family and friends. Thou shalt dedicate oneself to the community, except, of course, for anybody you know or are related to. It doesn't say that. What the teaching says is, don't think that those are the only world. Don't limit yourself. Don't limit your caring only to those who live under your four walls, or only those who you consider my people, us. But it certainly doesn't say exclude them. And what we get sometimes is this spiritual disconnection that arises from almost a very subtle spiritual arrogance. There's this sense of, I'm not interested in you. I don't have time for you because I'm in the service of the world. I remember when I first was going to take sannyas, because typically in India, where sannyas is where India is the land where this culture of sannyas has come from, or we have, in the Buddhist monastic traditions, you've got other Eastern countries where their monastic tradition has come from. But it's these lands of the East in which that sannyas parampara, that tradition, has come from. And what you have in the land of the East is a real understanding amongst the society of the value of our monastics, of the sannyasis. So even though in a family, obviously, parents' hearts, any color, any race, any religion, any region. But nonetheless, in India, for example, there's always this great cultural support. If a family member takes sannyas, even though the family themselves may miss that person, there's this whole respect and reverence and support in the community that says, wow, matlab, what a blessing that in your family, now you have a sadhu sant in your family. Now you have this saint in your family. I mean, it's huge. But in the West, that doesn't exist. And I remember when I was going to take sannyas, talking to Pujya Swamiji about this tradition in India where once you've taken sannyas, you really pretty much don't talk to your family. That all of those relationships are really cut off. And he said, but not for you. He said, first of all, your parents living in Los Angeles are not doing anything that impedes your spiritual life here in Rishikesh. It's not like they're micromanaging your day-to-day life or asking anything of you. They had no demands on me. He said, but also, when you are dedicating yourself now to seva of the world, it doesn't mean seva of the world minus those who gave you birth. They live in a culture in which if suddenly you stop speaking to them, instead of being respected, people are going to think, my God, what did you do? That your own daughter would, now not talk to you? Like, people would think, my God, you must have done something. And of course, they had been amazing, wonderful, beautiful parents. So I mention this because when you take sannyas, it's a dedication to a service of the world. No discrimination, no bhed-bhav. But it's not the world minus your family. Especially when you come from a culture like I did, where that family would actually be deeply hurt if you cut off ties. And I mention this here because as the questioner says, I'm not interested in them, I'm much more interested in the greater good. Well, your family is part of the greater good. Your family is part of the society, of the community. So that care that we give to the community, to the world, we also should give it to our own family and friends. Not being interested in them is actually, it's a way of cutting yourself off, and that's why you feel lonely. I mean, one of the greatest and most powerful spiritual tenets is compassion. We're taught to have compassion for the tiniest animals. I was telling a story the other night about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who kept bending down to save little caterpillars. Well, if we are supposed to have love and compassion, caring for the tiniest little creatures, what God, what spiritual tradition would say, oh, you should really care about the caterpillar, but your parents, forget them. Care about the ant, care about the mosquito, but don't care about your family or friends. That's not a path that makes any spiritual sense. The teaching is, don't only care about your family and friends. Recognize that the caterpillar, the ant, the mosquito, the homeless people, the disadvantaged ones, they are also your family. They're not separate from you. But neither are those who do live in your home, who are of your blood. So do some introspection and really ask yourself, why am I cutting myself off from them? Why am I pushing myself into a place of loneliness? Because deep connection is one of the most important things in life. It's one of the greatest and most powerful paths, avenues, tools, keys to deep fulfillment. And so the spiritual path is not to be cutting out connections. The spiritual path is to be creating more and more connections. So it's not, I don't care about my family. It's, I now care about this caterpillar as though he were my family. I now care about the homeless person as though she were my family. So it's a path of expansion, not a path of contraction. If your spiritual path is causing you to contract in your heart, you should feel connected to more and more beings every day. It really brings us the spiritual.
What is life?
What is life? We're here in these human bodies, which we've been very blessed to have after many, many, many incarnations. It's said that a human birth is one of the greatest things that you can have. This human birth is the pinnacle of evolution because it's said that only humans are able to actually experience spiritual awakening, God realization, self-realization. Only humans have the consciousness that enables them to really see and know that capital S self. So you're here in a human incarnation after God knows how many incarnations to get here for the purpose of your realization. That's why you are here as a human, is to use this birth to realize the self, which means to realize God. Right? Self-realization, sometimes we say self-realization, sometimes we say God realization, but it's the same. Because when you realize the self, that is the divine. When you realize the divine, it's not separate from the self. So that's why you are here, is to have that awareness. But along the way, we've also been given this thing called a human birth. And it's not something that we're meant to just ignore. We are meant to use this human birth as the very mechanism for our awakening. And that's why if you look at all of our scriptures, all of our teachings, the teachings don't say, abandon everything, forget that you are human, forget all of your roles and responsibilities, abilities, gifts, resources, forget them all, and just sit in a cave and meditate to get awakened. We don't have that teaching anywhere. And in fact, if you look at the lives of those, for example, like the Buddha, who left the palace, went and sat in the forest to get enlightened. Well, what did he do after getting enlightened? He came back. He came back to teach, to serve. The saints, the avatars, the divine incarnations, well, you're going to find them in all of our scriptural stories and everything. You're going to find them in the world, bringing back light to the darkness, bringing back dharma to adharma. Sure, they may periodically spend periods of time in the forest, but then they're back in the world. We've been given this human incarnation not as something to push away, but as actually the very mechanism through which we come to our awakening. So through our human path, through our connection to others, to ourselves, to this world, through our love for the divine. When you think, well, if everything's God, if we say aham brahmasmi, soham, everything is just God, the core of Vedanta, right? There is nothing but God. Say that in our human experience, we connect with God. Yes, we may know on the highest, deepest level there is nothing but God. But that's a very hard place to actually live from. As you put one foot in front of the other and you go to work and you do your grocery shopping and you mow the lawn and you sit in meetings in your office, it's very difficult to move through the world with an everyday, constant awareness that there is nothing but God. And those are the moments that lead actually to ignorance and mistakes, because we can't really, unless you are an enlightened saint, you can't really hold that awareness all the time. And that's when then we get caught up. There's that great story of the devotees of the Guru who went into the marketplace one day. And as they're in the marketplace, suddenly there's this big shout, "Get out of the way, wild elephant! Wild elephant on the loose!" And so everybody runs out of the road because the elephant is barreling down the street. Except one of the devotees. They'd come in a group of a few of them. One of them says, "I am God. The elephant is God. There's nothing but God. This is what our guru has taught us. What is there to be afraid of?" Now everyone is yelling at him, "Get out of the way!" The elephant guy, what do they call him? The Mahavat, the guy in charge of the elephant. He's yelling, "Wild elephant, get out of the way, maar dega aapko. He's going to kill you." But the man just says, "I am God, the elephant is God. This is what our guru taught us, what to be afraid of." So eventually, of course, the elephant runs down the street, grabs this guy up in his trunk, flings him a couple 100 meters. The guy lands far off in a field. He's broken every bone in his body. Finally, his devotee friends and the guru, they've called the guru now, they finally find him lying flat in the field. And of course, not only is the guy in physical pain and broken, but he's furious. And he says to the guru, "How dare you? Like, you told me something that wasn't true. I just followed your teaching, and look what happened." And the guru said, "Aha, that's your ignorance. When I told you everything was God, well, you didn't live with everything as God. You thought only you and the elephant are God. You forgot that every single person telling you to get out of the way was God. That the Mahavat, the elephant guy screaming at you to get out of the way, well, he was also God. But in your ignorance, You didn't actually understand what I said, and you just took it in this sort of spiritual arrogance of just you and the elephant are God, and then kuch nahi hoga. And this is what happens a lot in life. So when we realize that we are here, yes, everything is God, and we are meant to experience God through our human experience. Well, that's where the role of bhakti comes in. Because as humans, loving God, that devotion flows. Yes, of course, I know God is not separate from me. But that's hard to stay aware of all the time. Whereas it's very easy to remember all the time how much I love God. Being in love with God is something really easy to remember all the time, wherever you are. But the fact that there's nothing but God, well, that's much, much harder. And so we are meant to live this life as humans, not pushing away our human experience, but using our human experience. In the same way, the body is a gift. We've got these eyes that see Mother Ganga, these eyes that behold the divine deities in the mandir, that behold our loved ones. We have these ears that can hear the chanting of Vedic mantras, that can hear classical music, that can hear kirtan. We have these beautiful senses. The body is not the problem. The mind is the problem. And so, as we use this human experience, it means we don't push away our humanity. We don't push away our heart that cries when it sees a starving child or a homeless person. We use that open, breaking heart as our path to connect to God in the form of that child, the form of that homeless person, who now we serve through our bhakti yoga, through our karma yoga. So our human experience becomes the path to know God. Of course. Yes.
Namaste, Sadhviji. I just wanted to know, how should I deal with my fears? Should I push myself to overcome them, or should I just wait for the right moment to come? And what if the courage never comes?
Beautiful. How do we deal with fear? Do we push away our fear? Or how do we find that courage to face it? Well, it depends. Some fear is actually really good. You are here today because your ancestors were afraid. We are the descendants of those who were afraid. If you look at the way that just basic Darwinian evolution works, those who live long enough to procreate are the ones who procreate. They're the ones whose genes get passed along. So if you go back a few hundred years, you could say, and you say, well, go back to our ancestors living out on the land, right? Wild animals. Go back even a few thousand years. Well, suddenly the ground shakes. The ground is shaking, and they know that what that means is it's a herd of wild elephants, or it's a lion coming, or they hear the roar of a tiger. Now there's two types of people. One type starts to have a fear response. Heart rate starts to go quickly. And they realize, I'm in danger. And then they do something, whether they run away, whether they get their big bow and arrow, whatever they do to protect themselves, they did it. And they lived. And they had babies. And then you've got the other people who said, dekte, let us see what happens. They didn't live. They didn't have babies. We are not their descendants. So we are here today because our ancestors were the ones afraid of heights, afraid of wild animals, afraid of other things that are a danger to our lives. So the goal of life is not become absolutely fearless. Become reckless. Jump off of buildings, no problem. You double checked the parachute, you didn't double check it, I'm fearless. That's not the goal of life. When we speak about fearlessness, when Bhagavan Krishna speaks about abhayam, fearlessness, he doesn't mean recklessness. He's speaking about a fearlessness that arises in faith that we are actually being carried. It's like, for me, the way that I think about that is the kids that you see on the edge of the pool. If you've ever been in a public pool somewhere, a hotel, a condominium, whatever it may be, you'll frequently see little kids on the edge of the pool. They've got their little floaties on their arms, and their mom or dad or older sister or brother is in the pool, holding their arms out saying, jump, jump. And the kid is on the edge of the pool going, and they're running back up and down, and they're scared. They're scared, they don't want to jump. But in the pool, mom or dad is saying, jump, it's okay, I'll catch you. And eventually they jump. And they get caught. And then, of course, they love it, and they keep saying more, more, more. But that ability to leap, not into literal massive bodies of water when you can't swim, but into the metaphoric arms of God. That letting go of fear of things like, I'm going to fail, I'm going to make a fool of myself, I'm going to get hurt, people are going to laugh at me, I'll never be anything, I'm not good enough. That trust fall into the arms of the divine that says, I'm here for you. You do your dharma. You live your purpose. You fulfill your gifts. You serve as this instrument that only you can be. And I'm going to catch you. It doesn't mean you're going to be rich. It doesn't mean you're going to be a fantastic financial success. Those are not the rules of the game. God never says that. Trust me and I'm going to make you a billionaire. Never says that. Trust me and you will succeed in whatever you do. Trust me, you'll get the #1 grade on the exam. Not that. But trust me, and you will walk the path that you are here to walk. Trust me, and the flower petals of you will open, and you will blossom. So that's the courage that we are meant to have. It's not jump off of buildings, put all of your money in one stock, build a very unearthquake safe home in an earthquake prone area and don't get insurance. It's not that. It's have faith in me as you walk your path of dharma and purpose. I won't let you drown. So that's the courage you need to develop. And you develop it through faith. And yeah, you may not be super rich. You may not be the most successful financial person. People may laugh at you. It happens. In fact, if you haven't been laughed at, and you haven't been criticized, and you haven't failed, either you are very young, or you haven't lived a life of courage. I mean, if you've gone through your entire life never failing, never having people laugh at you, have you actually ever tried anything? So there's no promise about what the results are going to be other than your meaning in life, your fulfillment in life, and that you're safe in God's arms. Yes. We'll take yours as the last question tonight.
Good evening, Sadhviji. I'd like to ask you to throw some light on life after death.
Life after death. Well, I have to be honest here and say that for me, I'm really clear in my mind about what satsang is and what it isn't. What it isn't is me sitting here telling you things that I've read or that I've heard someone else say. It's me sharing with you that which I've experienced, that I've learned. It's me being as empty as possible vehicle, for that which needs to flow through as I possibly can. And I mention that right here specifically because I don't have any experience of life after death. I know I've been born and reincarnated. I don't have specific memories of those. I've certainly had beautiful moments in my life where I have felt beyond a doubt I have been here before. And I've had glimpses, visions of what that was like. But I don't have any sense of a chronology where I can say, oh yeah, I died then and then this happened and I remember it and it was like that. All we have are the words of either those who do say they remember their past, which again, I just have to take their word for it. I don't have any personal way of verifying that. And we have the words of the scriptures. And what we are told is, so if we shift from personal experience to words of scriptures, words of the saints, words of the Guru, what we're told really clearly is that after we leave the body, we take on a new one. Now, there may be a period of time before we do. Sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it's not. Different different journeys of different souls. Now again, there's only really one soul. There aren't souls. But when we speak about Jivatma rather than Paramatma, that Jivatma is the individual soul that keeps reincarnating in different bodies as it works out its karmic package. So when I take birth again, what I take birth as, what I go through in the interim between, is going to all be due to what the karmic journey that my soul needs to go through is. It's not like there's one place that immediately after birth everybody goes to for a while. You know, it's not like when you're in a conference and then, 11:30 you've got a tea break, and from 11:30 to 11:45 everybody goes from the conference hall into the tea room. It's not like that. Different Jivatmas move through different paths. And of course, some may never be reincarnated again. They may have fulfilled everything that is needed, and then that Jivatma just merges with Paramatma, like the drop merges with the ocean. Or, like our saints, like the avatars, they're already merged. They are Paramatma. And they've made a choice, a conscious choice to take on a body, to come back down, to guide the rest of us, to help the rest of us. Right? I mean, Bhagavan Krishna gives it very clearly. I incarnate in form to bring back light to the darkness. So there's a lot of different ways it can go. One thing is really clear from pretty much every religious tradition, whether you think about reincarnation, whether you subscribe to the idea of heaven and hell, whatever you subscribe to, one thing is really clear, which is that which happens after you die is determined by that which happens while you live. And since we don't really know what's going to happen after we die, but we do know what's happening right here, right now, it makes a lot more sense to pay attention and to focus on right here, right now. Pujya Swamiji always says, if you're not huggy right here, don't expect that hugs are waiting for you in heaven. That you're going to get later what you give here. And so then you end up in a situation where A, your life on earth becomes heaven, and B, if it turns out that there is this beautiful heaven, whether it's a heaven the way that certain religious traditions think about it, or whether it's a heaven as in a new incarnation in a beautiful way, whatever it may be, well, then you end up with double heaven, because you've got heaven now that you've created consciously, and then you've got the heaven that's coming to you after you die. Of course. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world. And so much love to you all. I look so forward to being together again with you all tomorrow.